Maya Chen had always been the quiet one in her college dormitory. While her roommates spent their evenings at parties or cramming for exams in the library, she disappeared every Tuesday and Thursday evening, claiming she had study groups. The truth was far different from what anyone imagined. At 21, Maya looked like she could be knocked over by a strong breeze. Standing barely 5 feet 3 inches tall and weighing less than most of her textbooks combined, she had the kind of delicate features that made people instinctively want to protect her. Her long black hair was usually pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she favored oversized sweaters that made her appear even smaller than she actually was. Behind wire-rimmed glasses, her dark eyes held a depth that most people never bothered to notice. What they definitely didn't notice were the calluses on her knuckles, carefully hidden beneath long sleeves, or the way she unconsciously assessed every room she entered, noting exits and potential weapons. These were habits drilled into her over 7 years of intensive training that had begun when she was just 14 years old. The training had started after an incident that changed everything for the Chen family. Maya's younger brother David had been cornered by 3 older boys on his way home from school. They had beaten him so badly that he spent 2 weeks in the hospital with broken ribs and a concussion. The police had done little more than file a report, claiming it was just kids being kids. Maya's father, a man who had fled violence in his home country only to find his children facing it in America, made a decision that would alter his daughter's life forever. Never again, he had told Maya as they sat in David's hospital room. Never again will anyone in this family be helpless. Within a month, Maya was enrolled in a martial arts academy that specialized in practical self-defense rather than competitive sport. Master Kim, a former military instructor, had taken one look at the quiet teenager and seen potential that others missed. Maya possessed what he called the invisible advantage: people would never see her coming. The training was unlike anything Maya had experienced. While her classmates at school worried about pop quizzes and social media likes, Maya learned how to disable an attacker in under 3 seconds. She studied pressure points with the same dedication other students applied to chemistry formulas. Her muscle memory was programmed with movements that could end a confrontation before most people even realized it had begun. Master Kim didn't just teach her physical techniques. He educated her about situational awareness, de-escalation tactics, and, most importantly, when not to fight. The best fight, he would repeat during training sessions, is the one that never happens. But, when it must happen, it should be over instantly. Maya absorbed everything. She learned Krav Maga, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and elements of boxing and kickboxing. More importantly, she learned to read people, their body language, their intentions, their weaknesses. She could spot an aggressor from across a room and identify his probable first move based on how he held his shoulders and positioned his feet. By her senior year of high school, Maya had earned black belts in 2 disciplines and instructor certifications in 3 others. She could break boards with her bare hands and throw men twice her size over her shoulder without breaking a sweat. Yet to everyone at school, she remained the bookish girl who helped with tutoring and never caused any trouble. College had been a fresh start, a chance to blend in even more completely. Maya had chosen a large state university where she could disappear into the crowd of thousands of students. She maintained her training schedule religiously, driving 30 minutes each way to a gym where nobody from campus would recognize her. To her dorm mates, she was just Maya, the pre-med student who always had her nose in a book and never seemed to date anyone. Her roommate Jessica often teased her about her mysterious Tuesday and Thursday absences. "Come on, Maya, you can tell us. Are you seeing someone? Is it a married professor? We won't judge." Maya would just smile and change the subject, letting people believe whatever they wanted to believe. The truth was that Maya had never felt comfortable with the idea of violence, despite her extensive training in it. She had hoped she would never need to use what Master Kim had taught her. College felt safe, insulated from the real world where bad things happen to good people. Her dormitory was in the nicest part of campus, with security guards and well-lit pathways. She followed all the safety protocols, never walking alone at night, always staying in groups, keeping her doors locked. But Maya had learned long ago that danger doesn't always announce itself with dark alleys and obvious threats. Sometimes it comes disguised as normal life, as ordinary people having an ordinary evening. Sometimes it comes from the people you thought you could trust. The first sign of trouble came on a Wednesday evening in mid-October. Maya was in the common room of her dormitory, working on an organic chemistry assignment while her floormates watched a movie. The room was filled with about 15 students, mostly from their floor but a few from other parts of the building. It was the kind of casual gathering that happened several times a week. Someone would order pizza, someone else would pick a movie, and gradually people would drift in to hang out. 3 guys from the 3rd floor had been drinking, which wasn't unusual. What was unusual was how they had been watching Maya throughout the evening. She had noticed it in her peripheral vision, the way they would glance at her and, then, whisper among themselves, the way they positioned themselves between her and the main exit. The leader of the group was Blake Morrison, a junior who played intramural hockey and had the kind of aggressive personality that some people found charming but Maya recognized as potentially dangerous. He was loud, took up too much space in conversations, and had a habit of standing too close to women when he talked to them. His 2 friends, Tyler and Connor, seemed to exist primarily to laugh at his jokes and back him up in arguments. Maya had been peripherally aware of Blake since the beginning of the semester. He was the type who made comments about women being emotional or too sensitive, who talked loudly about his sexual conquests, who seemed to view every interaction as a competition he needed to win. She had observed him carefully, the way Master Kim had taught her to observe potential threats, and had made a mental note to avoid being alone with him. Tonight felt different, though. Blake kept looking at her with an expression she recognized from her training, the look of someone sizing up a target. When she got up to throw away her empty soda can, he intercepted her path. "Hey Maya," he said, standing close enough that she could smell the beer on his breath. "You're always so serious. Don't you ever have any fun?" "I have plenty of fun," Maya replied calmly, stepping back to maintain a comfortable distance. "I just like to focus when I'm studying." Blake moved closer again, and Maya felt her training kick in automatically. She catalogued his positioning, his balance, the fact that his hands were loose at his sides rather than clenched into fists. Not immediately threatening, but worthy of continued attention. "Come on," Blake pressed. "You can't study all the time. Why don't you come hang out with us this weekend? We know how to show a girl a good time." The way he said it made Maya's skin crawl, but she kept her expression neutral. "Thanks for the invitation, but I have other plans." Blake's expression changed slightly, and Maya saw something flicker behind his eyes that set off every alarm bell in her head. It was the look Master Kim had warned her about, the moment when rejection triggered something ugly in certain types of men. "Other plans," Blake repeated mockingly. "Right. What kind of plans could someone like you possibly have?" Maya felt the room's attention shifting toward their conversation, but she kept her voice level. "The kind that don't involve drinking with people I barely know." It was a mild response, but Blake's face flushed as if she had slapped him. Maya realized she had made a tactical error. By rejecting him publicly, she had damaged his ego in front of an audience. Men like Blake didn't handle that well. "Wow," Blake said loudly enough for the whole room to hear. "Ice Queen much? No wonder you never have any friends. You think you're too good for everyone." Maya felt the familiar calm that came over her during training sessions. Her heart rate remained steady, her breathing controlled. She had been in more dangerous situations during sparring matches, but something about Blake's escalating aggression in this social setting felt different. More unpredictable. "I never said I was too good for anyone," Maya replied quietly. "I just prefer to study instead of getting drunk on a Wednesday night." Blake stepped closer again, and this time Maya didn't back away. She could see Tyler and Connor moving to flank her, and she mentally calculated angles and distances. The other students in the room were starting to look uncomfortable, but nobody seemed inclined to intervene. "You know what I think?" Blake said, his voice taking on a nasty edge. "I think you're just scared. I think underneath all that stuck-up attitude, you're just a scared little girl who doesn't know how to have a good time." Maya almost laughed at the irony, but she kept her expression neutral. If only he knew what she was actually capable of when genuinely scared. Instead, she simply said, "I think you've had enough to drink tonight, Blake. Maybe you should head back to your room." The suggestion hit Blake like a match to gasoline. His face went red, and Maya saw his hands clench into fists. She shifted her weight slightly, preparing for what her experience told her was about to happen. "Don't tell me what to do," Blake snarled. "You think you're so smart, sitting there with your books, looking down on everyone. But you're just a pathetic little girl who's probably never even been kissed." The room had gone completely silent now, everyone sensing that something was about to happen but not sure what. Maya caught Jessica's eye across the room and gave her the slightest shake of the head, a signal to stay back, though Jessica wouldn't understand why. "Blake," Maya said calmly, "you're making everyone uncomfortable. This isn't the time or place for whatever point you're trying to make." But Blake was past the point of listening to reason. Maya recognized the signs from her training, the shallow breathing, the way he was bouncing slightly on his toes, the fact that his pupils were dilated from more than just alcohol. He was working himself up for something, and Maya knew she had perhaps 30 seconds before the situation moved beyond words. She began running through her options. The room had 2 exits, the main door behind Blake and his friends, and a side door that led to the kitchen. The kitchen door was closer, but it would mean turning her back on Blake. The main door would require going through all 3 of them. Neither option was ideal in a room full of innocent bystanders who could get hurt if things went wrong. Maya made her decision. She would try one more de-escalation technique, and if that failed, she would end this quickly and with minimal damage. Master Kim had always taught her that the goal was never to win a fight, it was to survive it and protect others from harm. "You know what, Blake," Maya said, deliberately making her voice sound smaller and more uncertain. "Maybe you're right. Maybe I am just scared. Maybe I don't know how to have fun." Blake's expression shifted to one of victory, and Maya saw him relax slightly. Tyler and Connor grinned, thinking their friend had successfully intimidated the quiet girl. Even some of the other students looked relieved, thinking the confrontation was over. Maya let them think that for exactly 3 seconds. Then, Blake reached out to put his hand on her shoulder, whether to comfort her or assert his dominance, she would never know. The moment his fingers made contact with her sweater, 7 years of intensive training took over, and Maya Chin disappeared, replaced by someone Blake Morrison would never see coming. The transformation happened so quickly that most people in the room missed it entirely. 1 second, Blake Morrison was reaching out to place a condescending hand on Maya's shoulder, smirking at what he thought was his victory over the timid bookworm. The next second, he was on the floor, gasping for air, with Maya standing over him looking as calm as if she had just solved a math problem. What actually happened in those few seconds was a masterpiece of controlled violence that Master Kim would have applauded. The moment Blake's hand touched Maya's shoulder, she moved with the fluid precision of someone who had practiced the same movements thousands of times. Her right hand came up and caught Blake's wrist, not to push it away but to control it. Simultaneously, her left hand drove forward in what looked like a gentle push against his chest but was actually a perfectly executed palm strike to his solar plexus. The strike hit Blake exactly where Maya intended, causing his diaphragm to spasm and temporarily paralyzing his ability to breathe. As he doubled over, gasping, Maya used his own momentum against him, pivoting on her left foot and sweeping his legs out from under him with her right. Blake hit the floor hard, the impact driving what little air remained from his lungs. The entire sequence took less than 3 seconds and looked so effortless that several people thought Blake had simply tripped. Maya made no dramatic poses, issued no threatening statements. She simply stepped back to her original position and waited for Blake to recover, which took about 30 seconds of him lying on the floor making soft wheezing sounds. Tyler and Connor stood frozen, their alcohol-impaired brains struggling to process what they had just witnessed. One moment their friend was in control of the situation, and the next he was on the ground looking like he had been hit by lightning. They looked at Maya, who appeared completely unchanged from the quiet girl who had been studying chemistry problems just minutes before. "What the hell just happened?" Tyler finally managed to say. Maya looked at him with the same mild expression she might wear while discussing the weather. "Blake lost his balance," she said simply. "Maybe he's had more to drink than he thought." Blake was slowly getting to his feet, his face red with embarrassment and confusion. He knew something had been done to him, but it had happened so fast and so smoothly that he couldn't quite figure out what. All he knew was that touching Maya's shoulder had somehow resulted in him being flat on his back, struggling to breathe. "You?" Blake started to say, pointing at Maya with a shaking finger. But he stopped, because he couldn't actually articulate what had happened. Had she pushed him? Had she hit him? He remembered her hand touching his chest, but it hadn't felt like a hit at the time. It had felt more like someone trying to steady him, right up until the moment his entire world exploded into breathlessness and pain. The other students in the room were looking back and forth between Blake and Maya, trying to understand what they had witnessed. Most of them had seen Blake reach toward Maya, then, suddenly, collapse. A few had noticed Maya's movements, but they seemed so natural, so defensive, that it was hard to categorize them as aggressive. Jessica, Maya's roommate, was the first to speak. "Blake, are you okay? Do you need to sit down for a minute?" Blake straightened up, his pride stinging worse than his bruised tailbone. He was a hockey player, used to physical confrontation, but he had never experienced anything like what had just happened to him. It was as if Maya had found some hidden-off switch in his body and pressed it without warning. "I'm fine," Blake said through gritted teeth, though he was clearly anything but fine. He looked at Maya with a mixture of confusion and growing anger. "What did you do to me?" Maya tilted her head slightly, as if genuinely puzzled by the question. "I didn't do anything to you, Blake. You reached toward me, and then you fell down. Maybe you should sit down and drink some water." Her tone was so perfectly innocent, so concerned, that it made Blake's confusion even worse. He knew something had happened, but Maya was acting like the victim of his aggression rather than the cause of his humiliation. Several of the other students were now looking at him like he was the problem, like he was some drunk guy picking on an innocent girl who had done nothing but defend herself. "You did something," Blake insisted, but his voice lacked conviction. How could he explain that this tiny girl who looked like she might blow away in a strong wind had somehow put him on the floor without appearing to exert any effort? Connor, trying to support his friend, stepped closer to Maya. "Hey, what's your problem?" Blake was just trying to be friendly. Maya turned her attention to Connor, and, for just a moment, he saw something in her eyes that made him take an involuntary step backward. It wasn't anger or fear or any emotion he could name. It was the look of someone completely in control, someone assessing him with the cold calculation of a predator deciding whether he was worth the effort. "I don't have a problem," Maya said quietly. "Blake put his hands on me without permission. I asked him not to. He fell down. Maybe next time he'll listen when someone asks him to back off." The simple logic of her statement hung in the air. Blake had been drunk, had been aggressive, and had physically touched someone who had asked him to leave her alone. What had happened next could be viewed as simple consequence rather than retaliation. Blake's face was turning an even deeper shade of red. He was starting to realize that not only had he been humiliated, but he was also being painted as the aggressor in the situation. The other students were looking at him with expressions ranging from disappointment to disgust. "You think you're so smart," Blake said, his voice rising. "You think you can make me look like an idiot in front of everyone. But I see what you are. You're just a stuck-up little freak who thinks she's better than everyone else." Maya absorbed the insults without any visible reaction. Master Kim had taught her that words were just noise, and that people like Blake relied on emotional reactions to maintain their control over situations. The calmer she remained, the more unstable he would become. "I think you should go back to your room, Blake," Maya said again, her voice still perfectly level. "You've been drinking, and you're making everyone uncomfortable." Blake looked around the room and realized that Maya was right. The other students were shifting awkwardly, looking anywhere but at him. Even Tyler and Connor seemed less certain about backing him up. The mood of the room had turned against him, and somehow Maya had managed to make herself appear to be the reasonable one. "This isn't over," Blake said, trying to salvage some dignity from the situation. "You think you're so tough, but you're just hiding behind other people. Someday it's going to be just you and me, and then we'll see how brave you really are." Maya looked at him for a long moment, and Blake felt that same unsettling chill he had seen in Connor's eyes. When Maya spoke, her voice was so quiet that only Blake could hear her. "Blake," she said, "if it's ever just you and me, you're going to wish it wasn't." There was something in the way she said it that made Blake's blood run cold. It wasn't a threat exactly, more like a simple statement of fact delivered with absolute certainty. For a moment, Blake forgot about his wounded pride and remembered the feeling of lying on the floor, completely helpless, not understanding how he had gotten there. Then, Tyler grabbed Blake's arm. "Come on, man. Let's get out of here. This chick's not worth it." Blake allowed himself to be led away, but he kept looking back at Maya as they left the common room. She had returned to her chemistry textbook as if nothing had happened, but Blake could see that she was aware of his every movement. It was like being watched by a cat that had decided you weren't worth hunting but was keeping track of you just in case. After the three men left, the common room was quiet for several minutes. The other students seemed unsure of how to process what they had just witnessed. Finally, someone turned the movie volume back up, and conversation slowly resumed, but the energy of the evening had changed. Jessica sat down next to Maya, who was highlighting chemical formulas with the same concentration she had shown throughout the entire confrontation. "Maya," Jessica said carefully, "what exactly just happened? Blake is twice your size, and he just fell down?" Maya looked up from her textbook and gave Jessica a smile that was both innocent and somehow unsettling. "I guess he had more to drink than he thought. People lose their balance when they've been drinking too much." Jessica stared at her roommate, trying to reconcile the Maya she thought she knew with what she had just witnessed. "But he seemed so sure that you had done something to him. And the way you were standing, it was like you weren't even surprised when he fell." Maya closed her textbook and gathered her things. "Jessica, if someone that drunk and that aggressive puts his hands on you without permission, you should always be prepared for something bad to happen. I was ready to get out of the way if he fell down or got sick or something." It was a perfectly reasonable explanation, and yet Jessica felt like there were layers to Maya that she had never even suspected. The girl sitting next to her looked exactly the same as always, small, quiet, bookish. But there was something different about her posture now, something more alert and confident. "Maya," Jessica said as they walked back toward their room, "those self-defense classes you take on Tuesday and Thursday nights, what exactly do they teach you?" Maya paused at their door, key in hand. For a moment, Jessica thought she might actually get a straight answer. Then, Maya smiled that same unsettling smile. "Just basic stuff," Maya said. "How to get away if someone grabs you. How to make noise to attract attention. Nothing dramatic." But, as Jessica lay in bed that night, she kept thinking about the way Blake had gone down, how smooth and effortless Maya's movements had been, and how completely calm she had remained throughout the entire encounter. Those didn't seem like the reactions of someone who had just learned basic self-defense. Meanwhile, 3 floors up, Blake Morrison was having trouble sleeping as well. Every time he closed his eyes, he felt that moment again, the instant when Maya's hand had touched his chest and his entire body had stopped working properly. He had been in plenty of fights, had taken harder hits on the hockey rink, but nothing had ever felt like that. The more he thought about it, the more convinced he became that Maya had somehow gotten lucky, that what happened was just a fluke. She was tiny and weak, and he had simply been caught off guard by her desperate attempt to defend herself. Next time he would be ready for whatever pathetic moves she had learned in her little self-defense class. Blake didn't realize it, but in deciding that Maya had simply gotten lucky, he was making the exact mistake that Master Kim had taught her to count on. People like Blake couldn't accept that someone like Maya might be genuinely dangerous. Their egos wouldn't allow them to believe that they could be outmatched by someone who didn't look the part. Master Kim called it the gift of being underestimated, and it was the most powerful weapon Maya possessed. Blake Morrison was about to learn just how dangerous that gift could be. The second confrontation came exactly 1 week later, but this time Blake Morrison had come prepared. He had spent the entire week telling himself that Maya had gotten lucky, that he had been caught off guard by some basic self-defense move that wouldn't work twice. He had also spent that week watching her, learning her routines, and waiting for the perfect opportunity to prove that she wasn't as tough as she pretended to be. Maya, for her part, had known the second encounter was inevitable from the moment Blake left the common room. Master Kim had taught her to read people, and Blake's type never let a humiliation go unanswered. They would always come back, usually with friends, usually when they thought they had the advantage. She had been preparing for it just as methodically as Blake had, but with 7 years more experience in tactical planning. The opportunity Blake had been waiting for came on a Thursday evening when Maya was walking back from her training session. She always varied her route back to the dormitory, but the campus parking garage where she left her car only had 2 exits, and Blake had figured out the pattern. He positioned himself and 2 friends, not Tyler and Connor this time, but Mark and Danny from the wrestling team, near the stairwell that Maya would have to use. Maya spotted them the moment she entered the garage. Her training kicked in automatically, and she began cataloging the tactical situation. 3 opponents instead of 1, positioned between her and both exits. Blake in the center, the other 2 flanking him about 6 feet apart. All 3 were sober this time, which made them more dangerous but also more predictable. She could have turned around and walked back to the gym, could have called campus security, could have avoided the confrontation entirely. Master Kim had always taught her that the smart fight was the one you didn't have. But, as Maya assessed the situation, she realized that Blake wasn't going to let this go. If she ran now, he would just find another opportunity, possibly one where innocent bystanders could get hurt. Maya made a decision that would have surprised Master Kim. Instead of avoiding the confrontation, she walked directly toward it. "Hello, Blake," she said calmly as she approached the 3 men. "Waiting for someone?" Blake's confidence was much higher this time. He had backup, he was sober, and he had convinced himself that Maya's previous victory had been pure luck. "Actually, yeah. We were waiting for you. I think we have some unfinished business." Maya stopped about 10 feet away from the group, close enough to talk but far enough to give herself reaction time. She set down her gym bag carefully, as if she were simply getting comfortable for a conversation. "I'm not sure what business you think we have," Maya said, her voice remaining conversational. "You grabbed me without permission, I defended myself, and you fell down. That seems pretty finished to me." Mark, the larger of Blake's 2 friends, stepped forward. "Blake says you sucker punched him." "That's not very nice." Maya looked at Mark with genuine curiosity. "I'm 5 feet 3 inches tall and weigh about 110 pounds. Blake is 6 feet tall and probably outweighs me by 80 pounds. How exactly would I sucker punch someone that much bigger than me?" It was a reasonable question, and, for a moment Mark looked uncertain. But Blake wasn't interested in reasonable questions. "You got lucky last week," Blake said, his voice tight with anger. "But luck doesn't work twice. This time you're going to apologize for making me look like an idiot, and then you're going to show a little respect." Maya tilted her head slightly, and Blake caught that same unsettling look in her eyes that had chilled him the week before. "And if I don't?" Blake gestured to his friends. "Then, we'll teach you some manners the hard way." Maya was quiet for a moment, and the 3 men thought they saw fear finally creeping into her expression. What they were actually seeing was Maya running through tactical calculations. 3 opponents meant she couldn't rely on simple submission holds or joint locks. She would need to disable them quickly and decisively before they could coordinate their attack. "Blake," Maya said finally, "I'm going to give you one chance to walk away from this. Take your friends and leave, and we can pretend this conversation never happened." Blake laughed, a sound with no humor in it. "You're not in a position to give me chances, sweetheart. You're outnumbered 3 to 1, and nobody's around to save you this time." Maya nodded slowly, as if accepting the logic of his statement. "You're right about one thing. Nobody's around to save you this time either." The way she said it sent a chill down Blake's spine, but he pushed the feeling aside. She was just trying to psych him out, trying to make him back down the way she had in the common room. But this time he had the advantage. "Danny," Blake said to the shorter of his friends, "grab her arms." Danny moved forward confidently. He was a wrestler, used to grappling with opponents, and Maya looked like she would snap in half if he grabbed her too hard. He reached out to catch her wrists, planning to hold her while Blake delivered whatever lesson he had in mind. Maya waited until Danny was committed to his grab, then moved with the same fluid precision she had shown the week before. But, this time, instead of the defensive technique she had used on Blake, she employed something much more aggressive. As Danny reached for her wrists, Maya stepped forward and to the side, letting his momentum carry him past her. At the same time, she drove her elbow upward into his solar plexus with controlled force. Danny doubled over, gasping, and Maya continued her motion, bringing her knee up to meet his face as he came down. The impact sent Danny sprawling backward, blood streaming from his nose, completely out of the fight. The entire sequence took perhaps 2 seconds, and Maya was already moving toward Mark before Danny hit the ground. Mark had more time to react than Danny, but not much. He threw a wild punch at Maya's head, the kind of telegraphed attack that Master Kim had taught her to exploit. Maya ducked under the punch and stepped inside Mark's guard, her right hand driving forward in a precise strike to his throat. Mark staggered backward, hands clutching his neck, making choking sounds. Maya followed up with a sweep that took his legs out from under him, and Mark joined Danny on the concrete floor of the parking garage. Blake stood frozen, watching his two friends writhe on the ground in pain. The entire fight had lasted less than 10 seconds, and Maya hadn't even seemed to exert herself. She stood between Blake and his fallen friends, breathing normally, her clothes barely wrinkled. "Your turn," Maya said simply. Blake realized with growing terror that he had made a serious miscalculation. This wasn't some girl who had gotten lucky with a basic self-defense move. This was someone who knew exactly what she was doing, someone who had just systematically dismantled 2 grown men without breaking a sweat. "What are you?" Blake whispered. Maya considered the question seriously. "I'm someone who spent 7 years learning how to end fights quickly. I'm someone who hoped she would never have to use that training. And I'm someone who really doesn't like bullies." Blake looked at his friends, both of whom were slowly trying to get back to their feet but clearly in no condition to continue fighting. Danny's nose was definitely broken, and Mark was still having trouble breathing properly. Blake realized that Maya could have hurt them much worse if she had wanted to. "You're crazy," Blake said, backing away from Maya. "You're some kind of psycho. I'm going to report this to campus security." Maya pulled out her phone and held it up, showing Blake that she had been recording the entire encounter. "That's a great idea, Blake. Let's call campus security right now. I'm sure they'll be very interested to hear how you and your friends cornered me in an isolated parking garage and threatened to teach me manners the hard way." Blake's face went pale as he realized the position he was in. The recording would clearly show that he and his friends had initiated the confrontation, had threatened Maya, and had been the aggressors throughout the encounter. Maya's actions could easily be seen as self-defense against multiple attackers. "This isn't over," Blake said, but his voice lacked any conviction. He was beginning to understand that he had picked a fight with someone completely out of his league. Maya walked over to her gym bag and picked it up, never taking her eyes off Blake. "Yes, it is. Because if you ever bother me again, if you even look at me wrong, I'm going to do something that will make tonight seem gentle. And, next time, I won't hold back just because you're too stupid to know what you're dealing with." Blake helped Danny and Mark to their feet, and the 3 of them limped away from the parking garage. As they reached the exit, Blake looked back one more time and saw Maya standing calmly next to her car, watching them leave with the same mild expression she wore while doing homework. The news of what had happened in the parking garage spread through the dormitory like wildfire. The story grew and changed with each telling, but the basic facts remained the same. Tiny Maya-chan had single-handedly defeated 3 much larger men in a fight they had started. Some people didn't believe it. Others began looking at Maya with new respect and wariness. Jessica confronted Maya directly when she returned to their room that night. "Okay," Jessica said, blocking the door so Maya couldn't avoid the conversation. "I know you've been lying to me about those Tuesday and Thursday night classes. Nobody learns to fight like that from basic self-defense. What have you really been doing?" Maya sat down on her bed and looked at her roommate. For a moment, Jessica thought she might actually get the truth. Then, Maya smiled that same enigmatic smile she always gave when people asked too many questions. I told you, Maya said. Basic self-defense. How to get away if someone grabs you. Jessica stared at her. Maya, you put 3 guys in the hospital. Danny's nose is broken, Mark might have a damaged windpipe, and Blake is telling everyone you're some kind of ninja assassin. That's not basic anything. Maya's expression became more serious. Jessica, sometimes people won't leave you alone just because you ask nicely. Sometimes they keep pushing until someone gets hurt. I've learned how to make sure that when someone does get hurt, it's not me. It was the most honest answer Maya had given about her training, and Jessica could hear the weight of experience behind it. She realized that Maya wasn't just some girl who had taken a few self-defense classes. There was a story behind her skills, a reason why a quiet pre-med student had become someone capable of fighting off multiple attackers. Why don't you ever talk about it? Jessica asked. If I could do what you can do, I'd never be afraid of anything. Maya was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer than Jessica had ever heard it. Fear isn't always a bad thing, Jessica. Fear keeps you alert. Fear makes you careful. Fear reminds you that violence should be the last resort, not the first one. Maya looked at her hands, seeing the calluses that told the story of thousands of hours of training. The day you stop being afraid of what you're capable of is the day you become the kind of person you were trying to defend yourself against. Jessica realized that Maya's quiet demeanor wasn't just shyness or social awkwardness. It was the self-control of someone who carried a dangerous skill and the wisdom to understand the responsibility that came with it. Blake Morrison never bothered Maya again. In fact, he went out of his way to avoid being in the same room as her for the rest of the semester. The story of what happened in the parking garage became campus legend, growing more elaborate with each telling. Some versions had Maya taking on 5 men, others had her using exotic weapons. The truth was impressive enough, but Maya preferred the exaggerated versions. They helped maintain the deterrent effect that kept other potential problems at bay. Maya continued her training throughout college and beyond, but she never had to use it again in a real confrontation. The word had spread effectively enough that people understood she was not someone to be trifled with. She graduated summa cum laude with her pre-med degree and went on to become a pediatric surgeon, where her precise hand movements and ability to remain calm under pressure served her well in a different kind of life-or-death situation. Years later, when young medical students would ask Dr. Maya Chun how she developed such steady nerves in the operating room, she would smile and tell them it was all about preparation and understanding that fear could be your ally if you learned to channel it properly. Some of them understood what she meant. Others thought she was talking about test anxiety. Maya preferred it that way. The best protection, she had learned, was still being underestimated. And sometimes the quietest people were the ones you needed to worry about the most.